Welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We are already in the middle of October. I was looking at the date just yesterday and I was absolutely shocked that we're already in the middle of October. This past weekend was the Chicago Marathon. And I know from my perspective, it just got me so fired up about running and just celebrating the fact that we can run and that these major marathons are such amazing events. Sarah, how are you? You are coming off of your fourth marathon in the Chicago Marathon. I'm excited to hear about that today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, Austin. I'm doing really great. I'm still riding the high from Sunday. It was an incredible day, and we'll talk a little bit about it in this episode.
Absolutely. I think I have an idea of what your elevated moment will be centered around, but if you would like to share the specifics of that to kick off today's episode, I would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone probably knows what my elevated moment is. And it's not just the marathon, it was the entire weekend. It brought me so much joy. The city of Chicago was electrifying. It would the energy, you could just feel the energy flowing through the city. And it's a city that I know very well. I grew up in a beach town on Lake Michigan, about 2.5 hours from Chicago. So my family and I would visit the city quite often. Um, Year round, more times in the summer than not, but, um, it was just so wonderful to be back in that city, to have all my childhood kind of memories and moments come back, and it was a beautiful fall weekend. I got to connect with 8 Elevate athletes who were in town for the race. My parents came in, I had awesome crowd support or fan support, cheer support, from friends and other athletes. So the entire weekend was phenomenal. And then, the icing on the gluten-free cupcake was I was running strong, I was running happy, I was negative splitting, I was chatting with people, I was sans music, so no music, and ran myself into a really nice PR too on top of it.
Yeah, it was so amazing to see. I was just observing through social media and I was telling you before we started recording that Abby and I have made an annual trip to Chicago since we've been dating in the 5 years that we've been together every single fall. And it's just one of our favorite cities. It's a beautiful place to be at this time of the year. Really happy that you got pretty good weather for the race and just seeing people run in familiar areas really just got me so excited about not only running, but just the fact that everyone got to be there celebrating in that city, running awesome races. We had an American record for the women's marathon in Emily Sisson. She ran 2:18:29, which absolutely crushed by like 40 to 50 seconds the American record that was set this past winter in Houston. So it was a great day for running. It was an awesome day for everyone to celebrate, even from a distance like I was. And my elevated moment, this is probably something that I'm saying for the first time, since I started training for New York City, is that I am now like excited for New York City. I'm excited to go. I'm excited to run the marathon in New York City, not for the reasons of trying to set a PR or, show off all of the hard work that I've put in by any means, because I really haven't been specifically training towards it, but just to be in a city with so many people who love running and are so excited to be out there together. It's just going to be a party and we're all going to enjoy ourselves and we're going to make a trip out of it. So I'm looking forward to New York City here in the next, I believe, 3 weeks or so. 3 to 4 weeks is where we're at now as we sit
Yeah.
in the middle of October.
Yeah, you're about 3.5 weeks out.
You're
Taper time.
you've always been the person to tell me how far out from the race I am because I never actually know the specifics. It's funny. One of the things that I Google the most is days until and then insert thing that I need days until, like days until New York City Marathon, days until some random day in the spring that I need like a general idea of how many weeks are until. That's a common occurrence for me. So thankfully, Google and Sarah has me covered on that. But before we get into our topic of the day, and we're going to be talking about marathoning today, we're going to be talking about not only our experiences, but also lessons that we feel like we can pull. And a lot of people who have run marathons have pulled away from their experience as well. Before we get into that, we want to thank our sponsor at Inside Tracker. Whether you run, ride, hike, or swim, you understand what it means to push harder, reach farther, and go the extra mile. This relentless drive runs in your blood. That's why Inside Tracker provides you with a personalized plan to build endurance, boost energy, and optimize your health for the long haul. Created by leading scientists in aging, genetics, and biometrics, Inside Tracker analyzes your blood, DNA, and fitness tracking data to identify where you're optimized and where you're not. You'll get a daily action plan with personalized guidance on the right exercise, nutrition, and supplementation for your body. And when you connect Inside Tracker with your Fitbit or Garmin, you'll also unlock real-time recovery pro tips after you complete your workout. It's like having your own personal trainer and nutritionist in your pocket. For a limited time, you can get 20% off the entire Inside Tracker store. Just go to insidetracker.com/elevate your running. That's insidetracker.com/elevate your running.
Awesome. We're going to get into this week's episode talking about all the lessons we've learned from marathon training. And I think this is such a great topic because I've run 4 marathons now. Austin is on the brink of running his third. And we were talking before the episode about how every cycle has been different. The actual training cycle, the process, the outcome for the marathon. So we're going to share kind of our lessons that we've learned in the total of 7 that we have run. And it's going to be a really great discussion today. So the first one that we want to touch on is that everyone has a different path to get to the same destination, or every training cycle is going to have a different path to get to the same destination, which is the finish line of the race. How many times have you been in a training cycle and you're crushing it, you're consistent, you're getting the work in, you're getting the mileage in, you're getting the workouts in, and then you get to race day and you can go 2 different ways. Maybe your legs are feeling fresh and feeling good and you're ready to crush it. Maybe your legs are feeling heavy and you get to work on a lot of the mental strength and the mental side of things early in the race. You could have a lot of things outside of your control kind of play a factor in the actual race as well. You might also have different training cycles where there's a lot of life stress going on, a lot of maybe job stress, or you're moving. I know Austin has a lot of experience with this, and it's hard to be consistent. It's hard to continue showing up because there's too many life demands. And that's all okay. And I think, looking back and reflecting at least on my 4 and even thinking through Austin's 2 and his third coming up, it's like every cycle has been different. The training has been different. The actual course and running it and the process of racing has been different, and the outcomes are different as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. For my previous 2 race buildups, there's really been a lot of intentionality towards it. It's almost been like a laser focus. For my first marathon training buildup, I was just really focused on what it took to get to that marathon distance and how strong I could show up for my first marathon that year. And moving on to my second marathon, I think I saw so much room for improvement. I saw the ability to run faster, run stronger, become a more experienced runner throughout that training cycle. And now leading in my third with so many other things going on in life, like you mentioned, moving and just shifting the priorities around and accepting the fact that running is something that I will continue to choose for my life. It's something that I love doing. It's something that I want to continue to do for a very long time. And because of that, it can't always be priority number one. It has to sometimes take the back seat, yet still be a core part of my life. And that's really what it has been for this
Mhm.
marathon build up for me. I've gone out, I've run 6 days a week for the past however many weeks, and I do it because I love it. I do it because it relieves stress, it gives me clarity, it sets me up for success for my day. And it's an experience that I choose on a consistent basis. And because of that, I can go out there on November 6th in New York City and I can celebrate the role that running has in my life and the excitement that a marathon environment provides. This will be my first major marathon. So that's even taking it to another level. And that's really where my excitement's rooted right now, is just getting to be out on the streets of such a big, amazing city like New York. And, really seeing Chicago this past weekend helped to put all of this in perspective, because I'd be lying if I said I haven't been in my head a little bit about it, where I thought I should be going for a PR. I thought I should be committing more to running than I have been the past few months. But at the end of the day, I get to choose the direction of my life. I get to choose the path that I take towards race day. And in this instance, I'm choosing the path of consistently running, consistently making running a part of my life, but making the race more of an experience and a celebration as opposed to maybe the competition that I've viewed it as in the past.
Absolutely, and that's such a healthy mindset to be in, Austin, because you're 100% right. It is so tough to be all in on a race for multiple race cycles in a given year. It's exhausting, and, last night I, like, went out and I was like, "Wow, this is really one of, like, this is." I don't wanna say the first time in the 12-week training cycle, was I didn't do a whole lot in the training cycle. I was running a lot, I was focusing on strength training, resting, and really recovering hard, and that meant prioritizing my sleep. So, having that downtime, even if you are training for a race, but taking it in a different way and a different approach is totally going to set you up for success. And if anything, from what I learned on Sunday was, in my past racing experience with Boston and Mesa and CIM, it's like I was so nervous and so like needing to hit a certain goal, and that was the only thing that was gonna make, like, this race be successful, and on Sunday, oh, I mean, I was definitely nervous at the start, but it was for a different reason. My warm-up felt really good, my strides felt really good, and the weather felt amazing, and, I just knew it was gonna be a good day, and that made me nervous because I knew I had to be patient in the first half, and that's not always my strength. And my watch was not working. I thought I was running the pace I was, technically like supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to. But I was really leaning into like the effort, and I was running with so much joy and happiness. And I was able to see so many friends and athletes like every few miles. I was hearing my name constantly. By about mile 20, I realized there was another Sarah running like right behind me. And so we were getting like pummeled with Sarahs. It was amazing. And it just brought so much joy. And I was, looking back on my race photos this afternoon, and I either have eyes closed or I am just smiling ear to ear and just like so happy. And I know when you can run that way and you're still putting the effort in, but you're running happy, you feel joy, you're smiling, you show up so much stronger than you think you will, and it's such a better way to race, in my opinion, now that I've been there.
Yeah. And I love that everything you just mentioned discussed the miles of the race, the moments of the race, as opposed to the finish line. And that's really a lesson that I've learned through my marathon experience is that the journey is truly greater than the destination. And you can consider that in two ways. You can consider that in your training cycle. The weeks and months leading into your goal race are some of the memories, the things that you can pull from those experiences will stick with you for so long. And that's the journey. That is the process that it requires to ultimately be able to run a marathon and to be able to enjoy the race as well. Like you have to be trained for a marathon to be able
Yeah.
to run a marathon and enjoy the experience, even if it hurts. Like you understand after a marathon training cycle what kind of pain that you're going to feel on race day, and you can't really predict when it's going to hit, because if you're trained well, you're going to run hopefully 20, 22 miles before it really starts to get tough. But the
Mhm.
journey is greater than the destination, both in the buildup towards the race, but also on race day. The miles that you get to run, all 26.2 of them, are the experiences and the feelings and the emotions that are going to stir within you because you're out there both by yourself, but also in solidarity with everyone else running with you. Like it's such an interesting experience how you feel when you're out there. There's moments like Sarah, you were kind of mentioning where people were shouting your name or the girl next to yours name, where you're like, yeah, I am running this marathon. I am out here running this marathon. It almost feels like you're by yourself. And then there's other moments where you look to your left, you look to your right, and you look around and you just see the amount of people that are out there with you. And that's a special feeling as well. But all of that occurs in the journey, in the moments of the race, as opposed to the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible experience to, like, make eye contact with crowd support, and they're cheering you on, and they just wanna see you do your best, and, the city of Chicago really came together, it was amazing, even after I crossed the finish line, the volunteers were, like, fist pumping all of the finishers and saying, "I'm proud of you, you did a great job, way to go," and it was just so much fun, and, definitely my invitation to everyone listening is really lean in, to the next race that you're running and, experience what's going on around you. I definitely have, um, tunnel vision kinda mindset when I race, and I'm usually just, like, looking straight ahead or looking straight down to make sure I don't trip, and not really taking everything all in Chicago, I was able to do that, which was so great and so fun, and also, if you ever have the opportunity to run a major, highly, highly, highly recommend it, and I did get to run Boston last year, but it was such a reduced field size that Sunday definitely felt like my first real one, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Racing is an interesting thing because from the experiences that I've had, you have such a sense of clarity on race day. And by that, I mean,
Mhm.
Sarah, you were mentioning that you really don't notice some things. You can kind of feel like your head is down throughout the race. And I almost feel like that's because there's such a clear vision that you have for yourself, that you're blocking out all of the stimulus going on around you. But when you look up and when you look around and you see everything that's going on, it kind of takes you out of that mindset for better or for worse, because I think that it's certainly important to kind of block a lot of things out if you're trying to run, a really strong race for yourself. But if it's about experience and if you really want to soak it all in, just kind of raising your head up and seeing everything going on around you and really hearing, feeling, and taking it in, it can be really impactful for the experience of a race.
Yeah, definitely. I was probably too energetic out there when I got to see, friends and athletes, and I was definitely having a blast. If you watched, the videos on my Instagram stories, like, having a blast, and it doesn't mean I wasn't working hard, but I think you can balance both, and then, for me, it was around 23 when I started to really start to feel kind of the race and knowing that that was my time to start working. Um, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah. And when that happens, you can really, it's funny how you can recruit energy from the things going on around you. Cause I have found that, my head is down and I'm really focused on, the path forward for
Mhm.
myself when things are going well. But when things start to get hard, what are you going to lean into? You're going to lean into the strength that you've built throughout your training cycle or training cycles, the mental strength that we've talked about a lot in previous episodes of this podcast. But there's also energy, especially when you're running these major marathons in these big cities. There's energy to be recruited from the people around you, from the fans, from the other runners. There's a lot of energy out on the course of a marathon. And that's ultimately what I'm looking forward to in New York City, because that's what I saw
Mhm.
from Chicago from a distance.
Absolutely. There was, a very small dead spot. It was right at 23, 24. I don't think New York has that. I knew that going in. It was very light crowds, and it's like, "Okay, just time to focus and get this thing done." And it was really when all I was looking forward to was seeing the crowd ahead of me, the runners ahead of me, taking the right turn on Roosevelt, because I knew we were running down Michigan Avenue. I knew I'd scoped it out on Friday that that right turn, it was a small hill, and then you take a left into Grant Park, and it's about 200 meters and you're done. And when I saw the first person turn, I honestly don't really even remember the last 800 meters, but I kicked it into a whole different gear and got it done, and it was a lot of fun
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
process.
it's
Yeah.
that's really amazing. And going on to my second point for lessons that I've learned in my two marathon experience, it's so weird. Like the amount that you pour into a marathon training cycle, I feel like I've run more than two. Like two feels like four or five, to be honest. And
Well, you've ran an ultra, that counts.
that's true. It's a different world though. But
It is.
it feels like more, I think, because you gain so much from the experience. Like it's not a normal experience. It's not a normal thing to dedicate yourself to, at least, you know, from the experiences that I've had outside of running. It requires a lot of you, and because of that, it's a worthy investment to make. But one of the lessons that I've learned from running and training for marathons and really trying to acquire knowledge through the process is that success leaves clues. That is true. That is something that I think is a really important understanding, that these really strong runners out there, like Emily Sisson,
Mhm.
who ran the American record in Chicago, and like all of the other strong runners that you'll see from the elites to any of the other people running in Chicago or any other marathon that you may run, success does leave clues. There are principles and strategies that we can apply both to our training and to our racing that can make us a better runner. But at the end of the day, you have to find what works for you. You have to be able to absorb information and toss out what does not or is not currently working for your personal approach. There are too many factors to life in general, not even just running. There are too many factors to life that will play into the approach that you need to take towards a goal. And that's something that you can consider outside of running as well. Like, what are you trying to work towards in your professional or personal life? How does running play into that, and vice versa? So you have to craft your own approach. You have to understand what works for you. And I guess from the physiological perspective, like there are things, and this is where having a really strong coach can come into play, is that they have the perspective of maybe what you need that you can't have, because we can get really close-minded in our approach towards a goal and towards our training and towards how hard we think we should be working or not working. So just being able to understand that the things that you're seeing around you, there are clues out there, but that doesn't mean that you should consume and apply every single bit of information that you see.
Absolutely. You definitely, as an athlete, get to meet yourself where you're at and observe the clues. Figure out what's going to be best for you or work best for you in this next training cycle. You can't bite off more than you can chew. So if you have a few things maybe that you want to work on, a training cycle is a great opportunity to work on one or two things. Don't try to change everything at once because it's probably not going to be in your best interest. It's probably going to blow up, or you're not going to be able to be consistent enough with everything to keep it, it's like a balancing act of keeping everything going. I know there were times in this training cycle I really focused in on strength, but it was like the recovering really hard and sleeping. That was kind of my primary focus. The strength training, the single leg training and strength to get a really nice landing and a better running economy was secondary. And there were definitely a few weeks where I had to let that kind of slide a little bit, and that's okay. But I couldn't imagine trying to take on five other different things to make a training cycle be quote unquote a success. So for Chicago, another thing that my coach wanted to work on with me, so she was able to kind of handle it, which was nice. I just needed to execute it, was showing up strong for the last 10K. How did we do that? We did a lot of goal pace work on Sunday. I ran my long run on Saturday. And then after a training block, we got into long runs that had quality. So I had one easy 20 miler, and then the rest leading into Chicago, which was maybe 8 weeks, all had some sort of either steady state, moderate, or goal pace. There was always something there. And for her, she wanted to see that I was able to hit goal pace running a really strong high mileage week, right? If you're able to do that, um, in her mind, she felt like I'd be able to execute at Chicago. So she was able to kind of help me with that. I just needed to do my part on that. So, like Austin said, it's really great to have a coach. They can come in and help you with some things that maybe you're not really aware of or things that you need help with. But at the end of the day, you have to meet yourself where you're at and decide what's important to you to work on for the next training cycle.
You have to be able to define success for yourself as well, both on
Yeah.
the macro and the micro level. So on the macro level, what does success look like? I really love listing things in threes. So like in three ways, what does success look like? I remember for my first marathon training cycle, I did this exact thing. I set three goals. My first goal was to have a great marathon training buildup, 16 weeks of consistent training. And this was the moment of my life because I focused in on that as a goal. Sounds like such a simple goal, but it's really not. It's about
Yeah.
building habits. And because I said to myself that I wanted to have 16 weeks of solid, consistent, intentional training, I did that because it was a main focus of mine. It was a way that I measured success. And that built the habit of running that I still carry with me today, where I'm not training for a PR in New York City, but running such a large part of my life that number one, it's a no-brainer that I'm going to run any amount of times per week. And then also it's a no-brainer that I want to run a marathon, even if I'm not going to
Yeah.
run to, the highest possible standard of my ability level. I want to do it. It's something that I've built the love for. That's the macro level. You have to set the goals. Another goal that I set for my first marathon was running 26.2 miles, finishing the race. And that is an amazing goal for anyone who
Yeah.
is running their first marathon or just running the marathon because they want to run the marathon. It is a challenge for anyone, any experience level of a runner. The marathon distance is a challenge. And the third goal that I had was a time-based goal. I wanted to run under a benchmark time frame. And because I set those goals in the grand scheme of things, I considered it from 16 weeks out into race day, what I wanted to do. Those three goals stuck in my mind every single day. It affected the micro being the daily processes that I had as a runner and also as a person who was working running into my life. Some of my micro goals were to wake up and get my run done in the morning. Prioritizing that as a specific goal of mine created the habit where now running in the morning is something that I want to do. I crave it. It's something that affects and influences in a positive way the rest of my day. And B, it's something that benefits me as a runner. That's where I feel like, in my opinion, some of my best training is done. So that was a micro goal that I set for myself. And then another micro goal that I probably set for myself or worked towards was just getting better at the process. I remember early on in that first marathon buildup, I didn't know how to structure the hour leading into or the hour leading out of my run. We talked about this a lot on this podcast where, if you have a 60-minute run, you're committing more than 60 minutes to that run. There's something hopefully that you're doing before the run. There's stuff that you're doing after the run that are influencing your ability to progress and also just to enjoy the process as a runner. Those are the micro goals that we can set. Those are the things that we can really frame our mindset around, and that's going to build and instill specific actions and habits into your life.
Absolutely. I love that. And we all get to do that as athletes, whether we're training or not training, because over time they just become your lifestyle, which is awesome. And I also want to note the marathon doesn't owe us anything. Austin, one of your micro goals or one of your macro goals was to finish the race. And some people don't end up finishing the race. And I don't want to scare anyone, but the marathon distance is very tricky and you can control as much as you can. But at the end of the day, Mother Nature comes in, there's other things outside of your control. And sometimes you don't end up actually getting to finish it. So that's a huge goal and a huge win. And we all get to be grateful when we cross the line of a marathon, no matter if we're, striving for a sub 3 or running our first and just wanting to finish, it's never guaranteed. And I saw that on Sunday. Like, we had great weather, we had a great course, and people were still having, a really tough day out there. And it just goes to show that, you still get to be intentional with the day, but anything can really happen.
Yeah. I mean, to me, my feelings on that is that if it were easy, we wouldn't appreciate it as much as we do. If you've
Yeah.
run a marathon, if you've trained for a marathon and achieved that goal, you understand what it takes, even at minimum. Like, if we view the minimum as, what it takes on race day to run 26.2 miles, there's a challenge to that. It's physical, it's mental, it's emotional. And that challenge ultimately is what proves to yourself that you are strong and you can achieve and you can push through the discomfort that is going to arise at some point in a marathon. If it were easy, everyone would do it. It wouldn't be
Mhm.
something that in a positive way we identify with who we are as a person. And there just wouldn't be the appeal to it.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely. All right. Well, getting into my second lesson learned from marathon training, you're stronger than you think you are. Heck yeah. I know a lot of times going into marathon training cycles, specifically for this one, having COVID 3 weeks into the 12-week cycle I had to take 5 days off. I got to take 5 days off because I was sick, but going into a workout and then having a rest day and then going into a long run. It was my 20-mile easy. And I wasn't really sure I was going to be able to do it. And the first 10 felt incredibly hard and it was challenging. It felt uncomfortable. And then the second 10 just flowed and it felt so good. And afterwards, I just remember thinking and also communicating how much stronger we are as humans than we think we are. It's so much more mental than physical. And if you really put the right step forward or take steps forward to continue with your consistency, to continue getting out the door, to continue moving the needle, you will see big gains. You're stronger than you think. And it's a really good mantra to also kind of practice when you are out there on the marathon course, that you are strong, you are capable, you are confident, you're fit. And if you aren't, you wouldn't be there. Or if you weren't, you would not be there because it takes a lot to go through a training cycle and to show up on race day at the start line.
Yeah, we are so strong. We are strong beyond any measure of a number or a finishing time. And that strength ultimately, and I mean the deepest level of strength that you have as a person comes from the mental aspects of your being. It comes
Yeah.
from a purpose that is deeper than simply wanting to run a specific time. It's about what running that race and running to the best of your ability proves to yourself and what it shows you about the experiences that you have in life and how you can apply the experiences from running to your life outside of running and how you can push through hard moments and you can navigate that internal dialogue that we all have and often if that mental strength isn't developed, if we haven't had those wins that have established the precedent that we are strong and that we can push through and endure, if we haven't had that, it just takes development and it takes
Mhm.
time and it takes a willingness to kind of calm the discussion going on in your head that's saying you can't and just taking the little steps forward that say that you can. There's so many ways that this is felt in running. It can be felt just on a mile by mile basis where you tell yourself, I don't know if I can run another mile. And then you do. It comes in way of trying to hit specific paces where you're like, I mean, I've had so many days where it's like, oh man, I can't get to that pace today. And then you get to that pace and you're like, maybe I can hold this. Maybe I can run this pace right now. And then, like we were mentioning earlier with the macro and the micro, those are kind of micro things. On the macro level, you may say to yourself, I'll never be able to run a half marathon, a full marathon. And then you just take some small steps forward and you start to realize that you've pieced together some of the pieces to the puzzle that will ultimately establish the picture that you can run a marathon, you can run multiple marathons, you can sign up for something, you can commit, and you can become a consistent person even if you wouldn't identify as a consistent person right now. You can establish positive habits for your life that are going to have a domino effect on all other areas of your life. You can remake whatever you want to make out of your life. No matter where
Mhm.
you're at right now, no matter where you're going, you can alter the trajectory that you're on just by understanding that you have the strength to do so.
Yeah, you're one decision away from an entirely different life, right? New life. You get to make these decisions, and the best part is if you make a decision and it doesn't work out, that's okay. Now you know, and you can go back to, maybe it's like a move and the move doesn't work, so you can move back to your original place and figure it out. That's okay. But what if you make that move or you make that decision or you commit to training and it absolutely transforms your life and you're a different person because of it? You're happier, you're healthier, you're stronger. Like, I made a decision 3 years ago to quit my job, and here I am, running a awesome coaching business with incredible athletes, and we get to talk about it every week, Austin. through this podcast and get to help humans find their potential. And that's just so cool. And you never really know what you're capable of. So that one step forward rule is so important and it's so true. And it's something I definitely live with, most days, not every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. And, I'm gonna kind of begin the point that you have listed right now, Sarah, and I'm gonna let you build from that. And that
Yeah.
is believe in yourself. Believe in yourself as a person, as someone who is strong. And through that, or maybe within that, like through your training, build up that belief system. Play big. And I think, we've talked
Yeah.
about playing big on this podcast many times and really trying to understand what that means. It can mean a lot of things. It can be applied in multiple different ways for each of our lives. Something that I'm considering based off this discussion is that playing big is allowing yourself to be at risk for discomfort, some perception of failure, these things that we subconsciously try to avoid. Like, open yourself up to the possibilities of getting uncomfortable and what that could do
Mm.
for your life. Sarah, you left your job. I left my job. Um, I've moved multiple times. I started
Same.
running, and then like it's just
Yeah.
so many things that it's very uncomfortable at times. Within that discomfort is a lot of excitement. That's something that I learned in my first and probably even my second marathon buildup is, wow, this is uncomfortable, but this is like an excitement and a level of, you know, passion for life that I haven't really had until I committed to this thing that in some way scared me. And that's really what I'm looking at right now for my life is I'm going to set a goal that makes me a little bit uncomfortable to say it. I don't really know if I want that to be the goal because it might not work out in my favor. But if it doesn't work out in my favor right now, number one,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean it's not going to work out in the future. But also, if it doesn't work out in my favor, what can I take away from that? There's probably going to be a lot of lessons and experiences that once I get a little bit farther down the road throughout my journey, that I look back on very fondly because they'll probably influence the destination that I get to at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made so many valid points. And at the end of the day, if you don't believe in yourself, who is going to believe in you? It all starts with you. And that's the biggest piece to it. You have to and get to believe in yourself as a human, as an athlete, as a friend, as a coworker. Like that is your core. And then you get to find a way to apply it in different areas of your life. Going into the Chicago training cycle, I had 12 weeks to train and I made a coaching change. And it was it was an very exciting and uncomfortable change because on Wednesday mornings, I got to wake up early and train with really fast, awesome women on a track with my coach there. And that is a very humbling experience because you get to show up with confidence and strength and knowing you can do it, and I was not there, and on day 1, I got to run 1 mile at goal pace, and I ran 7:30, and I was basically, like, hands on knees at the 1,600 mark, and it's like, a very interesting kinda way to start a training cycle knowing that you're stringing 25 more miles on top of that, but also exposing yourself to areas that you get to improve on because you're being seen and watched by other people who are there to help you grow. And that was a very uncomfortable setting for me for a very long time. And I think, or I know, the past few weeks have been incredible. And I feel like I'm finally getting comfortable with just putting it all out there and having fun with it. But you get to play big, and that can look different and will look different for everyone. You can play big in a way that is moving the needle forward a little bit slower than maybe someone who's trying to take a big leap forward, like quitting your job or doing or making a move across the country, something like that. But at the end of the day, you, believe in yourself, know what you're capable of, and also, like, if you need help figuring out what you want to do or what you want to achieve, write down the things that make you happy, and then we'll talk.
I believe that one of the most empowering feelings that I've had in my life is, or maybe I'll just take, one of the most empowering feelings that I've taken away from running is that you can be 16, or in your case, Sarah, 12 weeks out from a race, and you can run a pace and it just feels absolutely awful. And you're like, what in the world am I doing here? And then 12, 16 weeks later, you run that pace for an entire marathon. And
I
you might
know.
even question if you had a little bit more left in the tank. And it's crazy to see that
Yeah.
that is what can happen with consistency and just showing up for yourself and being willing to get uncomfortable. And I really love the metaphor of casting votes for yourself
Mm,
or for what you want on a consistent basis, because that's what I believe it is. You're casting votes. Not one vote will never win the election, but by casting enough votes over a period of time, it will ultimately get you to where you want to be. It just might not be on your time frame. Maybe it will be on your time frame. You never really know,
yeah.
but the only way to find out is to piece it all together.
Yeah, and you can also cast multiple votes by surrounding yourself with people who are lifting you high in this process. I think that's a huge piece to all of this. You get to have the support of friends and family and significant others. Otherwise, it's a very lonely process. Running with others is huge, right? Um, so lean into that as much as you can as well.
Yeah, community, that has been one of my greatest takeaways in the past 2 years of my life is that, I mean, you're going to live or die by the community that you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And, it's funny that that's the case because oftentimes that's the most uncomfortable thing we can do is to intentionally either choose not to be surrounded by certain people or to be amidst certain people. Like sometimes it's really uncomfortable to be around people that we ultimately aspire to be like or to get to the level that we perceive them to be on. And then in other situations, we may look around and feel like these people aren't encouraging me. They're not helping me to get to where I want to go. I have to make the decision to put myself in a better spot because the community that you surround yourself with you'll either rise to the level or sink to the level of the people that you spend the most time with. So that's an extremely important point to make there. And the final lesson that we'll discuss today that I've personally pulled from my marathon experiences and really one that I've been working through the past few months is that you cannot fake what you want. I told myself after Buffalo that I was going to run. I put it on Instagram as a story. I said, I'm going to run under 252 in New York City. And that would have been, I'm just going to say it right now, I am not going to run that time in New York City in 4 weeks. Um, I thought that's
Never
what I
say never.
wanted. I th- I thought that's what I wanted. I thought that I wanted to run another really big PR in my next marathon. And then I started to train for it. And then I started to realize that number one, this might not fit into my life as it stands right now. But also, I do believe that if I truly wanted it, I would have made it fit into my life. I would have worked towards that goal. Now, would I have hit that goal, even if I would have poured all of my being into the past 4 months of marathon training? Would I have run the time that I posted on my Instagram story that day? I really don't know. Maybe not. But I realized and I weighed the sacrifice that it would take on my life as it stands right now and the priorities that I currently have for my life, that it's not actually something that I wanted right now.
Yeah.
I do expect that I'll want to run under 252, under 250 in the marathon. I think that in the future that'll be a goal of mine. I don't know, but I have to know that I want it. I have to really be willing to make the sacrifice and have the investment into the process, because it does require a lot of you. Anything that you're working towards requires a lot of you. And also, telling yourself that you want something when you don't really want it is
Mhm.
one of the most draining and disempowering things that can happen in your life. Like, to try to force yourself out the door every single day to run, to try to force yourself into any situation that you don't actually want to be in, and you're fooling yourself into thinking or believing that you do want that, it drains you. And you can only do it for so long. Your body can only keep up for so long. If you're going to establish a goal, it has to fit in with what you really want to prove to yourself and in your life want to develop into. Commitment requires a lot of passion, a lot of purpose, a lot of time, and a lot of energy. And it's important to understand what you're working towards and what it's going to require to get there. It's also okay, and this is what I learned through this experience, is it's okay to say you want something and then to understand that you don't really want it. Like,
Yep.
it's not comfortable, but at the end of the day, you'll be happier for it. I did feel a pressure released from me when I decided not to go all in for this marathon and not to train for a PR. Now, that pressure wasn't coming from other people. No one ever made me feel like I had to do something. I thought I wanted to, and to decide that I didn't truly want that, it, I hope I don't butcher the saying, but it's yeah, I'm going to. I can't remember right now, but essentially the theory behind it, it's not even a theory. The truth behind it is that every no elevates the future yeses of your life. So every time that you're willing to
Mm.
say, no, I don't actually want this, like this doesn't actually fit into what I'm willing to sacrifice for, it's going to elevate any future yeses that you do want to commit towards. And I think that's kind of what I'm framing right now, is like, what do I want
Yeah.
out of this stage of my life? And how can I allow the time that I'm investing into these things to elevate me to that level, to that vision that I have for myself?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, you are in an incredible stage of your life. And I know in 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to look back on this year and know that it was a needle mover in your life. I have no doubt about that. And you get to lean into the community in Texas and lean into your incredible job and your coworkers and the community you're creating there. And although running is never guaranteed our health and our life, at the end of the day, you get to lean into other things right now, knowing most likely running will be there for you later when you're ready to tackle it. And, you also get to run the streets in New York City and look up and take in the crowds and soak it all in rather than being laser focused in on trying to hit, a new goal. So you're creating a lot of wins. And I'm a big believer that by saying no to people, things, experiences, um, definitely creates room in your life for the universe or for whatever you believe in to come in and fill that gap with what you're supposed to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna be carrying a GoPro in New York City, so I'm gonna have some
Oh, heck
awesome
yeah.
footage of that experience. And just for you, Sarah, training for your fourth marathon, for me, about to run my third marathon, it just seems like every single time we come into a training cycle or just commit to that date on the calendar, we start to realize how much we've grown from the experiences that we've had in running. And I know that for each of us, it's something that we continue to do. I know that for our audience, it's a part of your life, to the point that you're listening to us discuss it every single week, hopefully. And there's so much room for growth for each of us, but there's also so much value in taking a step back and understanding what you've learned through the time and energy that you've already poured into running. So, one thing that we would love for you to do, and we may throw this out, Sarah, if you want to, when we get this episode released, you can throw up a text box in your story or something. And I would love to hear one lesson learned from um, people who have run marathons before, people who, have just reflected on the lessons that they've learned as a runner, because I
Oh,
really think
yeah.
that it would be an awesome thing to share as we lead into our future episodes as well, because this ultimately is why we do this podcast, because it's a great opportunity to reflect, to share experience, to build knowledge, and to celebrate what we get to do as runners, which is to get out there as often as possible and to move our bodies.
Yeah, and it feels good. Absolutely. Would love to hear everyone's lessons learned through marathon training or from marathon training. And maybe it'll be a second part two episode at some point.
I don't see why not.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening this week. We adore you, appreciate you, and absolutely love all of the feedback that I'm getting. Austin, you might be getting this as well through Instagram. So keep those DMs coming. It's been a lot of fun to connect with our audience that way. If anyone is listening for the first time or you're not following us on social media, Austin, where can our audience find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Austin Myers 12. Sarah, where can they connect with you and the Elevate Your Running brand?
Great. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Sayrah, Sayrah runs happy, and at Elevate Your Running. So feel free to follow us there and connect with us through DMs or on post comments, whatever you feel comfortable with. And we love you all. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.